Welcome to Awakening Perspectives with Laura and Liesl Claire.
Welcome to Awakening Perspectives with Laura and Liesl Claire. Hello. Hello, Michael.
Hi.
Hello.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Hello, Laura. Nice to see you.
Well, good. I'm glad to have you here. Michael is a classical composer, contemporary classical composer, and he has led a life with spirit guiding him through his creative process and spirit speaking to him in several different ways and predominant experiences that have given him, just like you, Laura, where you've got spirit telling you, kind of guiding you with what you're doing, as well as me. And so I like how Michael has spent his life really in tune with those spirit messages. And then he's also he's got a good balance in being able to not only listen and take on those messages, but then creating a plan and doing what's needed to bring them into manifestation and fruition. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And thank you, Michael.
Thank you for that nice introduction, Liesl. So what I wanted to talk about or bring to both of your attention for your feedback, of course, is I've come to see in my life that I had to compartmentalize the various facets of a life because we all have different areas that we're working on simultaneously. So to achieve some kind of balance, you have to be aware of that for one. So I'll just name a few. And so there would obviously be a physical level that we all have to be concerned with our health and self-care and not abusing ourselves by doing things that would be physically abusive. There's an emotional level where we're not going to allow people to emotionally be, emotional vampires or whatever, take advantage of our emotional energy, or in tune, not giving our energy so freely that we feel exhausted by inappropriate energy forces that we recognize. Then there's a big one that is extremely important for me, and that's the financial realm, because I think, we can get kind of like led astray or go astray when we don't take into consideration a feeling. And we're very concerned, we're very good at feeling things, but there's a point sometimes you say, should I really be, is that really in my budget? That particular item. Do I really need a new car right now? Or maybe this old car can serve the purpose, or other avenues like that, where there's a sizable financial outlay. And I have been guided by spirit in this particular one, because I was, looking for major purchases, houses, this and that. Should I move? Should I not move? And I always said to spirit, if it's not for me, then block it. It's extremely important to ask spirit to be part of the process of, I don't feel quite right about this. I feel like I may be overextending, or it's, I'm in movement, I'm in motion, but if it's not for me, then I trust in you and I want you to block it. So that has been another component. So I mentioned physical, emotional, financial. So let's start with that as a beginning of a discussion.
Well, I can say that when it's come to what I felt led to do, like your first thing you talked about was the physical, more like your health, making sure that you are taking care of yourself so that you have the proper energy to put into what spirit is leading you to do. That's where that's how we make ourselves physically present, to be able to have that energy and be able to put an effort, that energy that we can put that effort into. So I think that's a great aspect that you're talking about. And I know that you started your creation when you were pretty young and leading into where, like when we're in our 20s, we have a tendency to really overextend ourselves, or we just think that this energy is so abundant that we don't even think about it and we don't feel the repercussions of it until we're in our late 30s and 40s, where we're like, we've definitely overextended our energy out to where it makes it harder that when we can, at those ages when we can more focus on those leanings and directions in which we're getting, but that even at a young age, if we can start taking care of our bodies and taking care of ourselves so that we can have that energy and put that energy into that spirit-led life, can make a big difference. What do you think, Laura?
I agree with you on that Totally. And I agree with Michael with regards to the financial part. And I like his idea of if it's not for me, then block it. That's a great, I want to use that one for me because it's true. You know, we need to kind of go through, do I want it or do I really need it? And for me, I think the financial thing was the thing that kind of was my limiting belief, where it was like, well, if I do that, I don't have the money. Or what if I lose money doing this? You know, so I learned to let it go. And also I noticed the thing that helps me out a lot is when I give gratitude and I say, thank you so much to God, to the universe, and say thank you so much for everything I have. I have abundance, and all of a sudden, you know, I'll get some kind of weird check in the mail or financial somehow comes to me a little bit. It's like they recognize it, and as long as we don't focus on the financial as a negative and look at it as, yes, we will make it through, and yes, we will have everything we need, then it does come through. I do agree with that wholeheartedly, and I do believe it. It's great that it starts when you're young too. You know, and I know that you are passionate about what you do. I admire that. I like that things are working out in that sense.
Well, I thank you, Laura. I really do want to talk about that creative therapy that I think everybody who's in tune with spirit or being led with spirit, it's a great, great gift. I always saw it as in a sense, a spiritual deposit. And this is why it's extremely important, because you can get unfocused, is to have a list. It's like, you know, a checklist of what, you know, what we're talking about. I want to do this. I want to do this. Well, yeah, you want to do 6, 7, 8 things, but let's take one at a time. There's going to be an overlap sometimes because you're being led, but that can lead to a muddle. At some point, even that is a dialogue with spirit. And you can say, okay, you're giving me all these ideas fast and furious, but what is the one that you would like me to focus on now? Because it's extremely important to feel like you've made a deliverable. It's like you've hit a single. You didn't hit a home run. You didn't have to hit a home run. But if you don't hit a single, all you get is a muddle and you're jumping around and you feel lost and unfocused. So for me, it's extremely important to write down, these are the things I would like to manifest. And then it's a time thing. You just say, Liesel's been extremely helpful in this for me, extremely so. Put a time frame with spirit. Is this a reasonable that I would like to finish this painting, finish this book, finish this composition, finish this garden, finish this, you know, birthday party, you know, that I'd like to offer to someone else. And then I think at that point, once you have a few of these items, it'll be more clarified relative to a time deliverable. And that's, I use the term deliverable because they see what you're doing. They're going to assist you. They're going to basically, you know, lead you if that's what they want. See, that's the thing. You've got to be in a sense. And then if it's like, no, that's not really what they want, then you have these other irons in the fire that you can basically say, well, okay, I'm pushing it. In other words, my ego is more pushing this than allowing them to reveal, well, what is really important to them. So it's a dance, basically. You have to have an ego. You know, you wouldn't get up in the morning. You also have to have an idea, but then you have to be fluid enough and flexible enough. Okay, well, that was my first priority, but I feel like spirit wants me to do number 4 rather than number 1. But it'll be a checklist that as you move through it, and then you have just great gratitude, as you say, Laura. It's just, you're extremely grateful because then you say, thank you, spirit. And that's when you can get very emotional in gratitude and thanks. It's like, if I didn't have you to guide me, I would push my egocentric mind and it wouldn't be a good result because I know you're there, your spirit guides and your departed loved ones, and the energy is simply not right for this to be manifested in the best way. But this other thing that you're kind of really, it's on your radar screen, but it's not your highest priority. That is great right now. And that, of course, goes into all of these things of astrology, numerology, planetary alignments, all of these things that are also very important relative to knowing the chi and the energy that's out there and, you know, what we're living through. So I'm mindful of all of these things now.
I've got a question. What would you tell the people out there when you're focused on what you're creating, and let's say something gets you distracted? There's something that's going on, you know, family wise or whatever, and you kind of get off course. What do you do to get back on course and get motivated again to get back on that project that you were working on? Well,
it's very important, as I say, to say, this is my time with spirit. You have to basically, in a sense, say to everybody out that is involved with you, I don't want to be disturbed now. This is my creative time for myself, for my going inside myself spiritually, creatively. And unless it's a complete emergency, which most things are not, most things are just like, you're simply not to be disturbed. This is like, I call it going into the creative cave. You have to go into a creative cave of meditation and working with, and I say, you work on it. And then when you've got enough, write notes to yourself, and then we will have a session. Then
Yeah.
I will midwife this. You're basically directing this. This is why I have been on both sides of this. I have been creating things, and I was midwifed by a great mentor. And I'm reached a stage in my life where this is what I live for, is the collaborative therapy, because it is so invigorating to know that you've helped someone else to manifest and to basically bring into being something that didn't exist before. That is your self-expression. That is your baby, and that will always be your baby. And you take pride in that. And that to me is, it's the give and take of all of this that is so meaningful to me. So if you have these things that kind of pull away at you, you have to set your boundaries and say, this is my time with spirit. Because you're living with me, that this is, and I simply cannot allow you to interfere with my time with spirit unless it's
I like how you say that, and you really put it into, not only are we receiving these messages from spirit, that we're having these leadings and these promptings to be able to do these creative projects, but that we are also allowing spirit to be a part of the actual creation of it, giving that time. And when we receive those promptings and those leadings, I've noticed that it can come in two different ways. It can come in the macro view, where we get the big picture, and it may seem very overwhelming. And we see the big picture, and that's where it's good to, okay, that's where we need to break it down and say, okay, during this time, spirit and I are going to sit here together. We're going to work on just this part of it. If we are getting it the other way around, where we're getting micro views, but we don't know how it's going to be put together, then we focus on the micro view that we already have to work on that part until we get another micro view to finally put it together. So I think once we can start thinking about it that way, we can then put our focus, invite spirit to be a part of not only giving us the inspiration, but a part of creating it. I love how you explained that.
Well, I loved how you just explained, because you're really talking about deductive thinking and inductive thinking, starting from the small and growing it from a micro to a macro view, or you start from a deductive thing. This is my ultimate vision. I have this canvas, assuming you were going to paint something. Now you see it in your mind's eye. It hasn't been externalized on the canvas, but it's going to be a seascape, and you have a pretty good idea. And then you think of proportions, and then you work from that deductive thinking. And, that's how my mentor used to work. He did a lot of things. He was a Renaissance man. But he told me one time, he said, basically, well, I feel like doing clouds up there, and I do rocks. So it was that kind of thing. But he had his mind's eye was very, very, very clear as to what the final product would basically look like. So I think it's very, very important, which is why when you write books, for instance, you have these modules. You say, well, chapter 1 will be this, step 2, 3. You have certain modules that say, okay, and then you can work within it. You say, well, this is my general topic. And today, if you were writing a book about someone, you'd say, well, okay, well, I'll talk about my relationship with that person. I know enough about that person. Like, now we'll talk about his mentors or her mentors, or, their background. And then you focus on chapters and modules, knowing that, and then spirit will guide you, as you say, Lisa. Spirit will say, well, okay, you have enough on that particular area. Why don't you move to this? Because you have it delineated in a series of sub chapters. And then you can feel good, because it's coming together relative to a basic overall view, and you can feel like you're progressing at that point. And if you have people like me in your life, or Laura, or you, and then you say, okay, I worked on chapter 2, I worked on chapter 4. I'm talking about a book, but it could be a painting, it could be a composition, it could be with me it was song cycles. It's like, well, okay, I got song 2, but I really feel like I should go to song 5. But you had a whole, you had a roadmap. That's what I'm really saying. You have a creative roadmap of what you want to manifest ultimately. And then if you have people that are well-meaning, presupposes you're working with people that are intelligent on an intellectual level, on a spiritual level. they pick up things that, and that's how it works, because all of a sudden you say, well, I'm kind of blocked now. And then you speak to someone and you say, well, God, it's funny you should talk about that, because I had a dream exactly about that or something like that. And that's spirit saying, I'll get my message through from, one of the associates of this person, because this person has other things going on, and this person I know could get through. Whereas this, and then in that private sacred time, having all of that information, then you can sit down and manifest. So,
well, Michael, when you feel that you've been inspired throughout your compositions and your works, did you see the big picture, or were you given pieces at a time?
well, for me, what I've learned now is that it was all a labor of love. I did it because music to me is sacred, and every part of music is sacred. So that's the first thing. You get to the motivation of, why am I doing this? Is it a commercial thing? There's nothing wrong with that. Someone says, bake a cake and I'll give you $80, or do this for me. And it's a creative thing. And that can be very good, because it's a learning step. Write me a poem, write me a song, or, paint me something. And then you negotiate some kind of like deal that makes sense, where your time is valuable, your materials are valuable. And you say, well, that raises your self-esteem. It's extremely important, especially for empaths and, people that are, we're always giving ourselves, and you say, hey, wait a minute here. You're asking me for something. If I asked a plumber to do service, I would pay him. And you're asking me this. I want to give you a good product in the end, but I'm entitled to be compensated, because you're not feeling it per se, but it is an exercise towards mastery of that particular thing. That's why it's important to do these things, not feel guilty and say, okay, you want that. I'm not really inspired, but I think I can come up with something. So that's a different approach. My approach was always coming from me. And that's why, I don't do commissions. I could, but I'm at a stage in my life that I'm trying to manifest things that came through me intrinsically from, and that's where you have been so wonderful for me, Lisa, as a life coach, because you've helped me draw upon my life issues. And that is so important in the creative process, because you don't always see it when you're doing it. That's difference of like, it's a seed or it's a plant that's manifesting itself, and sometimes the plant doesn't even know what it's manifesting. Whereas someone says, well, do this, I say, yeah, I'll do it for $100 or $50 or $80, and you'll learn something along the way, and that person will be satisfied, and you don't have to be guilty. It was a learning curve to something that, oh, this is not for sale. This is not for sale. This is part of myself. It's part of my joy. It's part of my gratitude. So there's two different approaches here, and one must not confuse the two. So how did it come to pass? Well, I started always with poems. Poems was something, and that's why I say do spontaneous writing, and then over time you can refine it, you can go back to it, you can see the emotions that are underlying that. If you have someone that's really a master or someone that's well-meaning, and like I say, if you're working with a life coach, well, you have these various issues that keep coming up. Well, let's explore that. And then eventually it's just a mysterious coming together. That's the deductive, inductive, and also the reason. Why am I doing this? Is it something that I need to do, want to do because it's coming out of me? Or is this a commercial thing where someone's asking and it's like, yeah, I can do that. That'll take me 2-3 hours of my time. It's exploring ideas that I think are familiar to me, and I can come out with a good product. And then you pat yourself on the back and say, I made my deliverable. That's my point. The point is, I made my deliverable. I didn't just promise and then walk away unfocused, because that's no good.
No, it's not. But there was a process of not only receiving the information, being inspired, and then having it come out of you to have this vision. There was work that was done, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there, and commitment and focus that happened in order to get to the point where you could bring that deliverable.
Well, yes. And that's basically when your life is a creative one. And I say life, I'm not saying career, because I never had a career per se. I had these manifestations that were extremely important, because it was like, that's where I got a lot of spiritual messages. You went through all of this. It's like climbing a mountain, and then you're looking at the sunrise or whatever it is, and you say, oh, I did it. And then spirit will come. And sometimes it's like, but you're not integrated as a full-fleshed human being. You have these other issues. You're trying to please people. You're looking for approval. It's good. You can continue to do this.
but this is really, and that's where spirit comes in. You have to focus on these particular components of your life because that's been achieved. It can be very, very uplifting, but it can also be, in a sense, a sanity check because they see everything. You can't hide from spirit. You can't hide from your guides. They want to help you. They want to work with you. They give you so many opportunities, so much love. Oh, it's unreal. It's unreal what they do. So for me, it was always, I reached a point where, this is so important what I'm going to say now. This is where you have to constantly have an ongoing dialogue with the people that you cared about that have predeceased you. Even if they weren't like intimate blood, they weren't involved with you as family per se. Sometimes it's completely different other people. And you say, thank you for that nugget of wisdom, because it has now served me so well now. I didn't understand it, but now you have said something. And now 10 years later, bingo, I get it now. Thank you. Thank you for having been in my life and had said that truth, because now I see it. And
I've
now
been doing that a lot lately.
Huh?
Reflecting on what my father would say, before when I was younger, I'm like, oh, I'll never do that. And now I look back and I find that I'm doing the same thing. And it's like, now I know what he meant by that, and why did I take it that way when I was younger? Now it really rings true about those that pushed our buttons are here to teach us, or were here to teach us. And now I understand that concept a lot more in that sense. All the stuff my father did, I'm starting to do now. And it's weird. I'm grateful for that because I think he's guiding me as well. And I do believe that the spirit does see everything. So we can't hide it from them. You do your work as a labor of love. And if you do it out of love, I think there's a lot more joy in it, not just for ourselves, but people tend to appreciate it more because they can sense that it was made with love. Any creative process or any creative technique, anything in that sense where you're using your creativity, because that all comes from spirit. Anything that comes from spirit is going to be, how do I say, appreciated a lot more.
Well, what I'd say about that, Laura, and I totally agree with you, is a lot of people have these various, for me, it was basically a journey through very, very dark emotions that I had to somehow pass through. So if you listen to the music, it's not going to be upbeat. You're not going to, come out dancing around. You say, well, you have to know that person. And if you know the life of that person, and that was basically the creative roadmap that prepared him for these very, very, very difficult situations. It was almost like you had to arm yourself with that discipline, and you were tied in with these emotions, these dark emotions. And that's why it's so important when someone is doing something creatively, you have to have someone there. It's not about, the public approval, or that's a totally different thing. I mean, it's not going to be a bestseller necessarily, but it's your therapy, it's your life journey. And to have someone there to kind of like, see it through with you is so incredible. That's why it's so important to have, creative, well-meaning, spiritually guided people who understand their role, as I say, as midwifing very difficult emotions. And then you put them out there, and then it's going to be, time will tell. Time will tell if this will survive the test of time, or at least is going to be appreciated by others that we can't even know necessarily in this life. I did some things with Liesl, some recordings with Liesl relative to the 1930s depressions, the composers that were there. It was music that I had, and it brought me so much insight into a different time and place. They didn't have the technology, but the human condition doesn't change. The technology changes. Human emotions and human struggles are eternal. They're universal. And to see how like I say, for me, it's always honoring the past. It's so important to know the history of your own life, your parents, your ancestry as you can, and then the overlap of other people that came into your life as you get older. And then as you reach out to spirit and study, in my case, it would be music. And it's not just classical, it's popular. And that's how they come in. They're so incredible. I have sung things for Liesl as what I would say private concerts, I would call them. I would be singing music that basically my mother sang, my father sang, everything else. And then I'd be in a completely different setting. And it was like they came back to me. Mm-hmm. If you have found him, never let him go. I mean, I'm singing Richard Rodgers because my mother sang that. And then I'm in a different setting.
I'm doing that too. I've noticed I've been
And it-
doing that, singing like songs that my dad would sing, because my dad would always sing in the shower. And then I find that I'm listening to that music now, stuff from like big band music,
Yeah,
jazz, things like that. And then I'm singing these songs too. And it's really interesting because I'm like, well, geez, I wonder what dad or mom would say, you know. But yeah, I find it's this appreciation that we didn't realize that we grew up with. And as we get older, we go back to that and go, you know what, I really appreciate that. And we may not have known it at the time, but I think deep down inside our unconscious mind accepted that, brought it out when the time was right.
Well, the
And
important thing, Laura, okay, I'm sorry. The important thing relative to that is that has resonated with me. Now, I want to know more. Who was the creator that did that? Who was the lyricist that did that? How did I come to find that? That's when you're doing more digging, as I call it. To say my father sang it, that's great. So you know it was introduced. But then to show the appreciation, the real appreciation, you have to do, and you can. That we have the technology now. You say, well, this song, and then you ask Google, you know, who wrote it, who wrote the lyrics, and then you thank them.
yes,
Because and that draws all this other energy to you. It draws all these vibes. These spirits are out there and they want to be noticed. They want to be, and they know, and you notice it. And it just brings you a good feeling. And then you're drawing in all of this positive energy from spirits because you did the research. And then you ask them. You say, well, I'm going to write a song, or I'm going to do a sculpture, I'm going to do this. And it's just like, well, I know the various masters in the past in this particular thing, and I will draw upon them, their energy, and ask them to assist. And I think that's extremely important. And then you get mysterious glimpses of that, or an assistant. That's how I've always done it. It's always been a prayer, a cyclical prayer to spirit, and then they reveal themselves in mysterious ways, truly mysterious ways. And then you're just in awe. You're just in awe. You know, you're just in awe. You just say, oh God, now I see a complete connection with you that I didn't even recognize. And you're just grateful. You're just grateful, because everything we want to learn on this level, there's always someone that knows a little bit more than us in particular. And we have to learn. You have to become an apprentice. You have to learn from these people. You know, if you were in India, I suppose you'd go to some Maharaji or guru or someone else. It'd be some spiritual teacher that would be. So it's always like that. If you want to grow your progression, and not just basically stay stagnant, you want to basically grow your progression, which is why the creative energy is so important. Because and this is for most things, with most relationships, you just say, you sense it, you say, this is something I need more of. I need more of this particular kind of energy, these kinds of people. It's not what I first thought. I didn't think it was, but there's something about being involved with this that just exhilarates me. I'm exhilarated. And this other thing, well, that's kind of stagnant. It's kind of like same old, same old. I don't wish them any harm, but it's kind of like I kind of graduated from that. I'm now moving into another level of awareness. And it just brings you to a sense of balance and completeness. You're just more complete.
With your previous works, you were talking about that they weren't all the happy, lucky. They were really more that melancholy, shadow self type creation, which, we all have to integrate our shadow selves. But because of the fact that you're almost then laying the foundation and the soft bed for yourself to be able to do that work, because of what you are doing creatively, from what I know that you've explained with your previous works, versus what you're trying to do now in creative endeavors going forward. Your energy going forward now is of a different vibration, because you've integrated that other vibration that you had previously.
Well, Lisa, that's very well put. I totally agree with that, because it's what you said about shadow self, or, and this is what, again, in my case, and I spoke to someone, I mentioned it to you, and it's exactly what you said, Laura. You learn the most from the people that basically you're bristled, you're basically, and then when you think about it and you step back and you don't lash out, you say, there was a truth in that. They weren't just saying something to make me, it's like there was a challenge there. There was an emotional, intellectual challenge. And at first it gets you upset. And then when you sit back and say, yeah, I had to hear that. That was the tough love I needed to hear. Because otherwise you just get so lackadaisical and, and that's what you don't want. You don't want constantly being yes to by people. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Well, you're not helping me grow either. You're not, you're just saying yes, 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 yes. And I'm frustrated
Right.
for
That's a challenge sometimes, right?
and I'm frustrated and you're not helping me get past it. So I don't mean you any harm, but I have to find some food for myself that I can feel exhilarated and motivated to move forward. And hopefully you'll follow. And if you can't, well, so be it. This is my boundary with you. There it stays. I can't continue wallowing into the same pattern. So when you said to me, Liesl, about, that was what was said to me. And it was very tough to hear. Well, when you're tired of being sad, you'll stop being sad. When you're tired of being frustrated, you'll stop being frustrated. Well, that's easy to say, but you have to do so much work before you can, in a sense, shed that. I don't think it's so easy that you can just basically turn an emotion on and off like that.
No, it's a process.
But I will say this, though. When you're tired of taking it as an empath or a codependent empath, it's like you've eaten enough crow now. It's like, do you want to keep eating crow? Hey, you can keep eating crow. But you reach a just point that you're just ready to just vomit or just say, I've had enough now. Mm-hmm. You're not going to push my buttons. You're not going to get me upset. I did it to myself. I take responsibility in what I allowed to happen. I didn't have anyone in my life at the time that I understood these issues, but I've had enough now. And now I have to basically shed myself of this particular situation or emotion or whatever has led you to this. That's what happened. That's what happened to me. It was just like, you have to basically walk through those fiery embers, almost like to see the other side and to say, and then they'll keep throwing it at you.
It's funny how you said fiery embers, because I just did a meditation before our call, and really, I was sitting there in meditation, and I all of a sudden felt almost like there was leeches on my left shoulder, just, like a whole row of them. And I was sitting there going, I tried visually cutting them, trying to get, scrape them off, but they kept on coming back. So I'm like, you know what, that's not going to work. I need fire. And so I started building a fire from within, like that fire within that, that once your body gets so hot, they're going to fall off. And that's exactly what happened. That flame within that will burn off any of those leeches, to me, symbolized all the leech energy of expectation from this person or that person or this situation or that situation that has been sucking your energy, a good part of your life, or maybe for what's going on for that season, that is no longer serving you. Whatever that connection was created with, that was serving you to begin with, is now become that leech. And when you're in that spirit mode, this is why spirit leads you for these creative endeavors, is so that you can then surpass old paradigms that are no longer serving you. And those leeches can fall away once we let that fire burn within.
Well spoken, because that makes a lot of sense. I mean, really, that I could just envision that.
So when you've experienced, though, stagnation or frustrating times when you've already started and you've been making some headway, but then you have like a stalemate situation in your creative endeavors and in with your communication with spirit, what have you found to be the issue and or the solution?
Well, a lot of it is basically, for me, I can only speak, like I say, for me, it's what I said initially. You have these components of your life and you say, well, I'm drained. I don't see how to move forward at this point. The well
kind of self-analyze, it sounds.
The well is dry. The well is dry. Now,
Mm-hmm.
I've written any number of things that have come back because the energy was right at that point. I wrote things that were basically, that's why it's still important to write things. You have a painting that's half done for whatever reason. You have something else and then you just say, my emotion is not in it. I don't have the right people in my life right now. It's something I would like to manifest, I think, but for whatever reason, I have to now focus on these other things. That's why if you basically can put your life in various, as I said, physical, emotional, spiritual, financial, and then you kind of say, well, okay, that the well's run dry on that, so I'll let it go. And then you throw it up to them. You say, well, when you want me to take this back up because I would like to take it back up, then you'll provide the right people. There will be other people that will come in that will be very interested in this to carry this. What happens with me is that all of these various components in your life now reach a balance. And so it's very important to have that sanity check, I call it, in your own mind relative to, well, where am I out of focus here? Where am I? I know that I'm being pulled in all kinds of different ways, but what is really, if I don't take care of this, it's going to really throw the whole apple cart over. And that's where you have to basically be able to walk away. You have to say, well, I can continue to push that, but then these other things are just going to basically fall flat, and then the very thing. So it can take years. It can take years or, months, whatever, where you get all of these various components moving in the right direction. And then you feel a sense of balance and well-being. It's like, oh, I got through all of that, all of those painful emotions. And, for me, it was all emotional. My journey was mostly an emotional. It was spiritual, but it was an emotional more than other things, but it could be something for someone else. That's why it's so important to achieve balance. And everyone's balance is going to be different because everyone's life is different. Everyone's challenges are different. There are certain things that, we all need a roof over our head, food on the table. There'll be things that we all share but a lot of people's internal struggles, emotional struggles, life struggles with parents, children, bosses, employees, whatever. They're all going to be unique to that particular individual.
Right.
So that's why it's important to live long enough, because if you live long enough, then you can look back and you can say, oh, and then you can, help other people in that way. But if
Right.
they have to grapple.
That type of scenario, though, sounds like somebody who doesn't have their boundaries in check. And I think we all learn that. Where do we need to set our boundaries, live that spirit-filled life, and then have what we're led to do come to fruition? One thing I noticed, though, too, is, how earlier on in the beginning of our talk, you were talking about that we throw up to the spirit and you say, if it's not for me, block it. I love how you countered that for when you're kind of in that apathetic type state where you're kind of, at that point, you throw it up to spirit and you say, if this to be, then open some doors.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's like
absolutely.
that's another sense of balance there that you have shown, that one technique that you use. So this is,
Well, as you know, Lisa, I went to New England, New York in September because you had helped me. It's like, well, what do you want to manifest? This is so important to talk to people and say, write it down, get it out of some unfocused thing, and say, well, what do you want to see, and then have a reason. And sometimes it happens faster. Oh, I'd like to see that in 2 years, this, that, and the other. And then it's like, if that's meant to be, all the parts are coming together, and then it happens in 6 months, 3 months, 1 month.
Mhm.
And then you say, that's a miracle. I call those things miracles because you have all these other forces that you haven't completely seen that somehow are working on their end. And that's why it's so important to circulate. You have to go on these forays, I call them, and say, well, I want to stay home. I want to stay. No, you have to go out because it's exactly what you said initially. It's like, and then you're in the clear relative to any spirit manifest. And then you talk to them like I would talk to you. It's like, say, well, what more do you want me to do? I'm going 3,000 miles to try to see this thing through. It's the idea that is impressed upon me, and I'm going to make every effort to manifest this. And if it's not meant to be, well, then I don't take any guilt in this because I went way above what other people would do. They would just say, oh, well, and then you're free and clear. And then, because if we go and we're going to have a life review before spirit or ascended masters, and then you can say what I just said. And what would you have had me do under the circumstances? I did what I did because it was something I was impressed to do. The irony of this, Lisa, this is what's ironic, because it's almost like in twos. It almost happens in twos. It's like piled on in twos, where you're going to have 2 meetings. They're kind of different, but similar. And then you just let it all reveal itself. And then that's why you can't have expectations and you can't take it personally after a while. You can take it personally because it's like, oh, well.
You're completely right there when you're talking about it coming in twos. Is often things that we perceive, we'll see we have 2 choices. And just like with you, you had 2 meetings, and you may think I either have this or I have this. But when it really comes down to our life and we sit there and we see that we have these 2 options, much like a movie, we always see where the heroine or the victor has these 2 choices, and they've got to pick which one is there usually one's the best of two evil type situation. So, it's like you don't know what's going to happen, but you build this concept in your head. So it's like a lot of times we'll build expectation towards one, but not really realize what this one over here has all to offer and what kind of things really are going on behind the scenes over on this side, or maybe something that's totally different behind the scene. There's so many more options out there than what we perceive in those two things that we often see. So if we let spirit say, okay, I'll put my effort into where I feel at the time and make sure that you're led consistently by spirit, then like what you've experienced. And I know that you have expressed your life now as like a trilogy. Book 1 when you were younger, book 2 when you're in your mid years, and now that you're entering book 3. And now that you're entering book 3, I'd like you to explain, now that you've experienced pushing forward or going forward with a different vibration, the difference in what you're creating right now with the thing that's happening in New York. I would love you to explain more about what's going on.
Well, what's happening, that is just, again, it's so incredible. It was me. Book 3 is basically Michael coming out of his shell. And why do I say that? Because I'm a Cancer, for one. Home is very important to me. You can't write these pieces. Like I tell you, you have to go into the creative cave. It can be a lonely business, but it's so rewarding. There were times, like I said, and then I'll get back to answering your question about New York. When you're working with them, you have these moments of it's just such joy, and you live for that. I remember a piece I wrote for piano. It was a dark room. It was like one light. It was like storming and raging outside. It was like a winter hurricane, and I was writing a piece called Stars. With such clarity, it came through. And then you're just bathed in tears because you have a higher presence. You know that a higher presence is there with you. Infinite intelligence, whatever your concept of higher power, higher spirit, God, and you can't, and it only happens a few times. And then when this happens, and people listen to these things, or they look at these things, they say, "Oh, that was inspired." And you say, "Yeah, it surely was." And that's why it's so important to work through. It's 90% perspiration, 10% inspiration. It's not always going to be these aha, eureka moments, but you have to work at your craft. So getting back to your question of New York, how did that come to pass? I had the name, he was the conductor. They had conducted a piece of mine 20 years ago. I was kind of like not really focused. So 20 years have passed, and I still had his name. That's why it's important to keep a list of people that you felt good about it. It was a good experience, but whatever happened, life's challenges took you in a different direction. And as long as they're still here, and they haven't passed into spirit, there's some agenda that they would like to hear from you, or you could hear from them, whatever, that they would like to accomplish. And then it was just like, and then it's just joyful. It's just joyful. Oh my God, I took a chance. I haven't spoken to this person in whatever, 5 years, 6 years, but I didn't lose. And I had the email, I had the number, and it was just, and it is, in a sense, so much of this stuff is fortuitous, it's chance oriented. In my case, you have to have the gumption to say, get out of yourself, get out of your comfort zone, and you're going to meet some incredible people, not the ones you expect, but that's the challenge, that's the growth, that's the learning, that's the embrace. That's the jigsaw puzzle. That's my puzzle fitting with yours. You live for that. And then you say, thank you, Spirit, for teaching me the lessons I have to learn now at this stage of my life. It wasn't going to be with these people. As much as I care for them and everything else, I have to move into other areas with other different people. And as I said to you earlier, that's why it's so important to know your history, where you were, where you'd like to go, and to have a very good mind of all the people that pass through your life. And as you get older, it's just incredible. As far as New York, the thought that comes to me, Lisa, with all of that is it was very much like Tin Pan Alley. I said this to Steve. I says, that was like in the 1930s. I mean, they would have a Broadway show, and the composers then, Irving Berlin, Jerome Kearns, the people that were composing then, that's why they called it Tin Pan Alley. They knew the producers, they knew the show, but you had to be tough because you would go there with certain songs and say, well, I can't use that. Can you write me a song for the soprano like this? And for me, it was so personal, and so it was like you could take it as a rejection, but these people were so tough and strong and masterful that they were able to get over that aspect of it's business. So I'm kind of melding a whole aspect of it's personal to me, and when this all became a possibility, of course I was extremely emotional, and that's where I would share with you. I would share for you all the spiritual meanings of hummingbirds and everything else, because there's a whole hummingbird is a totem, is a spiritual totem for me, and I've been seeing more and more of them. But for these people that are producing something, it's like, well, they may not share your emotion. They're doing something for you. And then it's just like, well, I want the self-esteem and the respect that I have earned at 68. I only want common courtesy and this, and we all want that. My life is worthwhile. Your life is worthwhile. Everyone, but if you're not going to treat me with respect and you're not going to treat me with some kind of intelligent behavior, and I don't think that's cruel. I think that's just basically, it's the law of attraction. Of course, I had an expectation. I called him and he says, oh, it looks like it's like, he didn't want to make a complete commitment at that point in time, although he's the artistic director, because they have committees, they have other people that they have to run these things by. And then I saw him one last time. He says, oh, it looks like it's 90% going to happen. And then I saw him one last time before I left New York. He says, yeah, it's going to be programmed in December. And I had put this out to Spirit. The key thing with this is I had put this out to Spirit, and I think you know this, Lisa. I says, well, I think this would be nice if this could be manifested in 2 or 3 years. And I went to see him in September, and it's ongoing for December. That's how. If you're on the right path with what they want, Spirit and the guides, it can happen so much faster. And the key with that, you have to get rid of anything that is toxic, that drags you down, that is not it doesn't serve you. And once that whole energy, in a sense, minimized, sometimes you can't just completely purge it, but at least if it's minimized, and then other things can flourish or come in, because now it's not renting space in your head or your emotions. You now have that free
Right.
to now create. Now it's like, okay, I know how you have to be handled or treated or minimized, whatever word works for you. And now this is my space. This is my time. This is what I came here to do.
Well, I think when we're dealing with and cultivating a relationship with Spirit, where we actually take on those leanings and those promptings, we have an obligation to determine what type of vibration of others that we're going to accept, and put into place boundaries so that we're not depleted, so that our energy can be put in those areas. It's our obligation. It's part of our contract with Spirit.
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, I totally agree with that, because and you're led, because if you had doubts, I'm in this house, which is a portal. Elisa. I asked for a house where I could lock the door, and then there was a piano that was provided besides. This is like, if that's not a sign that yes, we want you to continue on this path of music, however it manifests itself, whether you've done all the work now, and I do want to share that with you, because what happened when I came back from New York, there were all kinds of other ideas. It's like, you have that material, Michael. Now it has to be probably reworked. You have that energy. Now you can take that, you can transpose some of these things. You can make it, for 2 men rather than a male and a female, because it's more personal to you. It's the question of you're coming out of your shell, or your hesitations, or your stresses or anxieties, whatever you want to call them, and saying, I wrote this, and it's in a sense a precursor to something else. It's almost like a chameleon that is saying, oh, I had these colors for that part, and now it's like, well, or something that says I'm shedding that skin, and this is more true to where I am right now. It's why people that, as they get on in life, can be evolving into a greater reflection of themselves, of a more or another aspect of themselves. It's like, I did all of that, and
Well, you were initially talking about is the experience of where Spirit was leading you to get back to your music, and the signs that Spirit gave you for that. I would love for you to tell that story about finding your portal.
Oh, yes. Well, because I knew I had, again, it's just this internal kind of like yearning. It's a yearning that says, I really would like to do that again. And this is very important, what I'm going to say. because it's almost like a reward. You are given these incredible things because you have earned them. You know, you can ask for things all you want, but it's almost like you have to do that hard work in another area of your life, taking care of your mother, taking care of your father, taking care of your child, you know, taking care of your husband, your wife, whatever it is, taking care of, you know, the finances in this particular situation that have gone to hell. And now you have to take on the task. It's not something you want to do, but so there's always, in a sense, a challenge that's posed. And then and then you put it out there. Well, I don't really want to do this anymore. But when you complete that task or that challenge, then it's almost like what you wanted is just, in a sense, shown to you. Well, thank you. That it's like your gold star that has become manifest because you did something in another area of your life that was extremely grueling, extremely taxing. And as a reward, spirit will now, at that point in time. So I was taking care of my mother, you know, in a bed in care. She had, you know, dementia, everything else. And I had said at that point in time, I really would like to get back to the music. And then to make a long story short, it's almost like they lay breadcrumbs for you. And then you're shown this place and you say, this is totally unique. And you don't even understand it when it's first shown to you. It's so incredible. You can't even fathom it. And this isn't a palace. It isn't it's just a place that I could afford in a manufactured home at a price point with everything else I was doing that I felt comfortable that I could absorb it. And there was a star on the house. There were all these suns that were basically protecting the house because we're sun. And we always say that love and light. Well, what's light? It's sunshine. It's like we all have shadow sides, but basically, are you a person of light or are you a person of darkness?
I liked how when you said that, you know, this house and this portal came to you just at the appropriate time, you were asking spirit and asking the universe for a place like this. That how much there were so many signs after signs after signs that came to you to prove it to you that this was your place.
Well, yes. And oh, that's the thing, Lisa. Yes, you're reminding me of that. And that's very good because I had written a piece called Our Winged Muse. It was about, you know, hummingbirds pollinating flowers. Well, there was a plaque in the bedroom, in the bathroom that had exactly that. There was a glass that said Paris, and I had studied in Paris. It's almost like you can't believe this. And then Steve.
And then the piano.
Well, the piano was even more, that was just like over the
Right.
top. I couldn't even believe it. But you know, it was just like this house was made for you. It was basically, it was like a concept in your mind that you basically, and then it was delivered because you had made a directive that was so clear. And there's always a fly in the ointment with these things though. There's always a fly in the ointment. It's like, it was like, I said to them when I says, I would like to go back into music, but I don't want a handyman's delight. You have to be very specific with them. And then you have to wait. If you're not, if you just say something and it's not focused and it's not clear, well, they'll give you something, but it's not. And then they're kind of, it's just like people here. It's like, well, that's all you asked for. So if you say, I don't want a handyman's delight. I want to get back, you know, and the fly in the ointment was there wasn't a washer and dryer. Well, you know, you're not, if spirit is working so hard to make these things happen when they're big like this, and you say, are you going to throw it back because you got 98% because you didn't get a washer and dryer and it was at a price point that you could afford? It's like, no, thank you, thank you, thank you. And then you fix that one item that was basically a test. It was another test.
I love when Laura gets to that point. She has a saying she likes to say too, don't you, Laura?
What's that?
When you get to the point where you're getting what you want.
Oh yeah. I say thank you and more, please.
Yes. Yes. Thank you and more, please. And then of course that when you say thank you and more, please, then their attitude on the other end is yes, but we have these other things we'd like you to achieve and accomplish and do. And then you can have a sense that you're working with us, that we have some, you know, we want you to continue to grow, which means that all the lessons that you need to profess or work through, and then you will be rewarded. Yeah, I think that's so important, again, relative to this, when we talk about energy. And I learned this from you. That's why you're so wonderful. When you start seeing everything, every single thing as energy, whether it's a rock, a stone, a tree, a flower, you know, whatever it is, a sheet of paper, these are just, and then people are manifesting certain energies. And that's what I say. Is this positive to me? Is it neutral? It can be neutral. Doesn't have to be positive or negative. Okay, that's That's neither here nor there. There's going to be people that they're just like ambrosia to you, that you can always trust them, you can always create with them, you can always work with them. Most people, you have to negotiate something, they're in some bell, which is fine. And then you have these are diabolical. These will just stab you in the back. They will never work with you. And then you just have to say, I don't understand it. Maybe that was the test in this lifetime to realize that energy, it doesn't mix. And I don't feel guilty about it. And I don't feel beholden to it. I'm done with it. And whatever it is, you say, I got to end this because this is so draining, so toxic.
Or manage it better.
Or manage it better. And that's where you need other people to come in. You say, well, and that's what I've always said, it's like, that's why you have to empower yourself financially. You say, well, I'm going to hire someone to do this. This is so impossible for me to do emotionally and thank God I have the wherewithal financially that I can hire someone who's more equipped to deal with this situation, because I have run the gamut and it is just exhausting me, and I don't need to. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. At some point you say, I don't have to suffer this, and I don't have to feel guilty about it. We're all going to have moments of pain that we have to somehow.
I think where the suffering comes into play is when when we're trying to accomplish something different of a higher vibration, yet we do it with the concept of thought patterns that no longer serve us. That's Correct. Where suffering comes into play. And so we have to really go back, almost like tear down the house, go back to the foundation and rebuild again at that point, so that we can then build that that better vibration, that better house that serves us now at this time instead of what served us maybe in our younger years. Throughout what you've created and what you're currently creating right now, what are some of the hardest things that you've had challenges with in bringing your projects to fruition?
Mine have been physical ones currently, and I'm trying to break through that. Mine entails using my hands, and I'm currently fighting carpal tunnel, so it comes and goes. So I'm saying to spirit, this is going to be I'm getting better. I'm feeling much better. I deserve to be healthy. I'm trying not to focus on it or talk about it, because I think the more I talk about it, the more it manifests or continues. So if I just know that it's going to go away, this is just temporary, then I can get back to what I need to do. I do find that sometimes I get discouraged because, again, it's things I can't control, like technology programs and things like that. So I always think ahead of myself. And then when I have to go back and, like you said, go through the checklist and go, okay, wait, no, I need to just focus on this first. Don't start jumping ahead. When I'm jumping ahead, I get discouraged. So I like the idea of making a list and going with a list. It does help out a lot.
Oh, I like to put it into focus as, like maybe a couple months ago, your hands weren't hurting you and they weren't being an issue at that point. So you were able to do whatever you needed to do with your hands, but other areas you weren't able to focus on, you can now focus on those areas. But you can also sit there and you can say, this is how you what can I do? What can I do?
Yes, exactly.
And to find the appropriate collaboration to fill in what you can't do.
Yep.
Might help too. So it's like, and I know that Michael's story with his works, they didn't come just by him alone. He had collaborations and inspirations with other people that had their input and showed him different techniques as well.
Yes, and that's the only thing that matters to me now going forward, is to find kindred spirits that do wish to manifest creatively as therapy. And as I said to you, that's what I'm looking for, because that's how spirit operates. Every Tuesday I would bring things I was working on, and because he was such a Renaissance man and a creative person, other things would come into focus. And spirit is excited about that, because if you're reaching out to them with predeceased masters of whatever art form or creative form that you want to do, then they're excited, because they can just sit there and then all of a sudden you're calling them, you're saying, hey, I need your help. I want your help. I'm going to work on it. And I know that it's going to be good, but it's not going to be as good if I don't have your assistance. And then magical things happen. They just happen. So that's what I'm looking for now at this stage of my life, at 68. I will do some things where, I'm kind of being led, but it's a difficult journey when you're doing it alone, especially with people that don't understand. They don't understand, why are you basically locking yourself away to do this test? Because I need to. It's part of my salvation. It's part of my being. It's part of my happiness. It's part of what makes me a whole person. You get these glimpses of the divine that they're so unique and so wonderful. It's just if you had any doubts about another plane that works with us, those are the things that say have no doubt, because even though they're not with us physically, they are ever with us in spirit, in mind. And if you continue ask for protection. It's very important to constantly ask for protection and guidance, guided to the things that are meant for you, that they want to deliver to you with effort on your part. And then you're just in such gratitude. And then peace first, because then you've gotten rid of all the toxic. Gratitude, yes. And then ultimately joy. When I found out about this acceptance, as it were, of doing this, I was in such joy. I had tears of joy, tears of elation. It was something I had written, God, a long time ago. And then I was just kind of like, you're ready now, Michael. You weren't ready before. That's the thing. You're now ready to manifest this. And you helped me, Lisa, with that by writing it out, getting it out, and then going there
Right.
and say, and then we'll see. It's like shaking the tree. I'm shaking the tree now. Now, if you want something of this, because it makes sense, then come on, tell me give me something, because I'm making the effort. Another thing that I asked for, the house I asked for, it came to pass. I asked for this thing, it's coming to pass. And these kinds of things, whatever they are in your own particular lives, and you ask them, what am I supposed to learn from that particular deliverable that has come into being? I see them as little miracles, because everyone had to say yes. That violinist, that violist, these people you've never met, they had to learn the part, they had to sit there, they had to go to rehearsals. I am so humbled by that. I am so humble and grateful by that it came to me, and this conductor had to say yes. Everyone had to say yes. And the more people that are involved, you just say, well, you're on some incredible journey with spirit. And that's part of my legacy too. It's not just, and this, Lisa, the music is only one, but it's all about balance and all about saying, we are who we are. We are our own special creations. And we don't want praise and we don't want pity. We want to basically be honored, be shown the respect that we have earned relative to meritocracy. That's why it's all important. It's a meritocracy that as you get older, you just say, I earned this. I earned this place. And spirit has, because of my hard work, it was, again, provided and delivered, because I was thinking correctly, because I now had combined the right emotions, the right thought process. I was mature enough, balanced enough that I could see it through. And there's nothing like that. You don't know what's going to happen. It may be exhibited in a museum. You do paintings and different things. You say, that could be in an exhibit. If spirit wants it and you want it, you can say, I'm going to do 3 or 4 of these. I'm going to get some other, and it doesn't have to be all about you. You say, well, I want to find 4 or 5 other painters, and we were going to do a show. There's a private work that's involved, there's a whole spiritual thing. And then there's the public display where you basically make your deliverable. Other people are brought in, and then it just grows from there. Then it can become very big.
Well, that's what just I was just thinking, just think about a project. Let's say you're just moving, for instance, and you've got all this stuff that you've accumulated all these many years. You've got to go through it within a certain amount of time in order to get to your new space, right? To your new project. What do we have to do with it? What can I do? What can't I do? Or what needs to go away so that I can do this? And then what can be delegated? Those are the 3 things that with any project has to be taken care of. So if we're finding that something isn't flowing correctly, that's usually one of those things, that we're not taking care of something that we can do, that our energy is being drained by stuff that we're not able to do, or stuff that's taken our energy from what we should be doing. And then not delegating those things that could be just delegated, that needs to be a component of what the final product. So you've got those 3 things that we have to then pull apart in order to find out what to go forward on, and to get the components that we need to be able to go to the next step for whatever project we're working on. When we can sit there and kind of, instead of the limiting beliefs that we might think now, or I have to do it all, that's not it. I remember when, and we can't do it all. I mean, we could if we wanted to, but do you really want to do it all? No, we don't want to do it all. We want to have those right components come to us. And if we do the internal work that we need, like some of us will want to do it all so that we can get the whole, oh, I did this. And it's not the right vibration because of our attached need for that emotion. That's where, when we come into this slam, the brakes have been slammed on our project and there's a stalemate, that means I need to work on this external need for glory or fame or whatever is this external need, or being liked or what have you, to burn that away so that we can then find the right components to be able to go forward.
I agree with everything except the one thing about maybe you do need that not fame, not approval, but a sense of, again, your own self-respect. Because as an empath, as a, we are always in a sense, we're over generous, over good, over, and then you say, well, maybe you have to sit back and say, yeah, I pat myself on the back. I earned it.
Well, that's an internal cookie, or an internal, where you're giving yourself the kudos, that instead of saying I need to do all this so that everyone else gives me the kudos.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Why not learn to give yourself the kudos for what you can do? Admit when you can't do what you can't do, and find out what's either hindering you from being able to do it, or find what other component do you need to add or delegate in order to have it come together.
Well, yeah, and that's why it's so important when you get into the delegate thing, you have to be able to negotiate. I mean, Stephen Sondheim wrote, I think, Putting It Together, and he was talking exactly about what I'm talking about, these productions where you have to hire producers and, technical people and this, that, and the other. It's like, how big is this production or this deliverable that you're envisaging? Some Broadway musical? I mean, whatever it is, whether it's a house or, whatever it is, you have to basically, deconstruct it and say, I'm going to do these things. I can't do these things. It's too physically taxing. I have to then basically hire people or pay people or have some other arrangement with someone as a quid pro quo. And sometimes it's going to take time relative to what you said earlier, Lisa. You have to basically say, well, is that a realistic time frame? 2 months? Maybe it should be 6 months or 5 months or even a year. It's not going to be a realistic, but that's another checklist. It's like, well, I'm moving further because I'm getting more of the pieces to this puzzle, which means people and resources together so that this thing can now move at a time that makes more sense.
Right.
So it's all that balanced navigation. And I can say it now at 68 because it wasn't always the case, but I feel it now. I mean, I'm not 38, I'm not 40, you still have your mind and you're getting older, but that's what happens. Time and life keeps moving on. And if you can still have your wits about you and your mind about you and you're a good person, not perfect, but a good person, you can take credit in that and say, well, I continue to move in my progression. Other people can, hop along and move very quickly. Other people are very slow and methodical. But as long as they're moving in the right direction, it's like plants. They bloom at their own pace. You say, well, what's better? There's nothing better. It was a life progression of energy that reached fruition. That's what we're really talking about, a fruition that has been achieved. And that is a great joy. That is and you couldn't do it alone, especially when you have these things that are bigger than you. I had something that I had sung for you before, Lisa. It kind of came into my mind because without singing it, and this is how I work, how things come to me. And this was sheet music that, my father had in a collection of sheet music. And this song, you can Google it. That's why it's so wonderful. It's, smile though your heart is aching, smile even though it's breaking. When there are clouds in the sky, you'll get by. And this is the key line for me. There was always something that resonated with this song. And this was the line: if you smile through your fear and sorrow, oh, that is so, because you've now transmuted it. You are smiling through your fear and sorrow. And maybe tomorrow you'll see the sun come shining through for you. I mean, that is so powerful. And why else is it powerful? The theme was written by Charlie Chaplin, Modern Times, but he didn't write the lyrics. The lyrics were written later by two people, John Turner and Jeffrey Parsons. Well, Jeffrey Parsons was a pianist who died in 1995. And this is the lesson. Thank you, Jeffrey Parsons, because that lyric has meant so much to me. And I am grateful to you. And I'm glad that you did it because it means the world to me. And that's what I want. They are thanked. They come into your life with other energy. Charlie Chaplin wrote it. And so this thing can go through decades. It can go through centuries when you know the history behind creative things. And then they come to you and you say, wow, that was an incredible spiritual energy that has so enlightened me. And that's what I want for everybody in their own creative process. They do something and then all of a sudden it takes on another level of awareness and appreciation for people that have preceded you on your journey. And you thank them and then you're drawing, think of that. Think of all of that energy that you now have drawn and harnessed to yourself, making a spiritual prayer of gratitude, which is basically all of the rituals. When you think about all of the rituals in the past, you know, whether it was a sacrifice of some sort, and you have to basically offer something to higher power. And then with your efforts, then you have these incredible things that are revealed to you. That's why it's so important. And you are healing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big one. You're healing yourself in the process. It's all about you're healing yourself as you're doing this incredible journey of manifestations, whatever they may be for you, and individually and collaboratively with other people. That's fundamentally my message and has been. And I think it's so important that everybody have that own sense of the divine, the spark of the divine within themselves, but also with people that you have a kinship with, kindred spirits. And then you're in this loop of timelessness.
Well, we've
I'm
talked a
very-
lot. We've talked a lot about like being the spirit led, and we've talked about, you know, trying to bring that to fruition. What kind of steps are you taking right now in order to really preserve that work so that somebody else can then see it, hear it, experience it, so that they can be inspired to carry?
Well, I do a lot with you, and that's the thing, Lisa, with all the recordings and everything that we have done. And then that moves forward. I'm thinking of the same thing relative to this orchestra.
Mhm.
If they treat me correctly, I'm going to say it to them. You're renting the orchestral parts from the Leonard Bernstein estate and the Aaron Copland estate. I want you to have these parts. I want you, because of my feeling of joyful gratitude, that if we collaborate, you will have these parts as part of your legacy going forward, that you can rent them. So this is much the same. It's like you work on different aspects with different people, and because you have so empowered yourself in other areas of your life, you say, it's exactly what you asked me, Lisa. It's like, well, I'm not planning on going right now, but when you get to be 70, you say, where do these things end up? Is it enough that it's in an archive, or now you have it in other people's hands? They've met you, they know you, they were grateful for their time with you, and then where does this end up fundamentally? And that's kind of what I'm dealing with right now in my own legacy.
It is a preservation does equal like that legacy. You know, what am I doing in order to preserve it so that way it can carry forward or be passed down? You are definitely in that period of putting your energy towards that legacy. We're just entering that and can maybe in the consideration phase for that, because we know it's coming soon where we're going to have to do something similar, but we're still working on projects. I'm working on a couple of books, and Laura's got her oracle cards that she is working on, but we do have it in the back of our mind. Where is this going to go after we're gone? That's something we do need to take in consideration. It's not something that we can just sit here and let go in the back of our mind. We need to have some kind of plan as to where it's going forward. Now, with you, you've taken the initiative to where we've done several recordings, so your story is going to be out there. I plan on writing a biography or on you, or at least a portion of your story. And then you also have your website and stuff like that, and other things that you're doing to do that proactive legacy and preserving of your material so that it can survive.
I've got a question, and it's like a legal one per se. Like, it's your music. Do you have a copyright or a patent, or any of that, so it has your name on it, so nobody else can take that.
I have it, but Laura, as a practical matter, with the technology as it is, it really, it's almost like worthless in a sense. So you can, I have works that are basically in the Library of Congress relative to copyrights, but with the technology being what it is and due candor, if someone wants to basically take things from you, because it's and this is what we're facing as a society. It's the intellectual property theft, not just in music. So I don't fund, and it is something that I grapple with right now. It was one of the things why I kind of like let it go for a while, because having done the recordings, the CDs, everything else, and archive, all the rest of it, and then it's just like you have an expectation relative to what you've worked on in your life, as a possible, and this is what I would say to Liesl and you. It's basically, you have manifested so many things, and then you reach a point, you just say, there's an archival situation, and then there's like, well, are we going to try to monetize it in some way? And if you were going to do that, there would be nothing wrong with that. And so there's two hats there. There's the marketing hat. I would like to get some residual income from this. Or you just say, well, I've empowered myself in other areas and you get to an age, you just say, well, I'm going to give it or Spirit's going to lead you. Then you get back to the whole thing. It's like, well, Spirit, lead me to where this material would be led to the right energy forces and the right persons that would honor me and value what I created. And if they can monetize it or whatever and preserve it, so be it. And then if anything happened to me, you would say, Spirit, lead me to the right people, because I can't further this. That's not my area per se, but I know that it's very important. You hear this on the radio often when it comes to music, how things were discovered. They were in libraries mostly, and then all of a sudden a cello sonata was discovered that was 200 years old. And you just say, think about that energy that was just kind of dormant, but somehow was protected and preserved. And then all of a sudden someone that saw the value of it, and then it came into being. That's why I'm very grateful, because there's going to be so many unsung heroes, as it were. I'm talking about composers primarily, that have to be very resigned, and and then eventually it's like, well, do you really want to just do it basically and have it gather dust? That's the play as a creative person. How much time do I, which is why it is so important to have dates and deliverables where people can bear witness to your truth.
Well, I think that we can also energetically protect, and I know you said protection and is very important, but we can energetically protect it and put intent into whatever we create too. That I don't need to personally have my name 200 years from now saying it came from this, but if my works inspire somebody else to be able to connect themselves with their divine spark within, and that relationship that they can have with their ancestors, with their spirit team, and with the creator, then that makes me happy. In fact, I just had a scenario with a client where she would often come to me to give her a reading in order to interpret dreams, or to give her a reading needing guidance and stuff like that. And my goal for when I do my coaching is for people to really get into touch with themselves, so that they can start getting the messages, so that they are so deep and so profound. There's no question, there's no doubt that this is the path you're on, that these are the things you're supposed to be doing. So that way you have that internal guidance, that internal rudder that is saying, hey, I'm on the right path. And so what was really nice is to get that feedback from her, that she experienced something just over this last week, that she's growing, and that she was prompted to want to call me, but then got the message through Spirit herself. But with such deep conviction, now she knows that she's on the right path. And so our works, if we can do something like that, where we put that intent into our work, just like I put my intent into me teaching somebody else those skills, that it comes back to us in confirmation somehow, even if we are the spirit, part of the spirit team afterwards, saying, I know it was you that led this to me, or somebody just saying, hey, this here really touched me, and it is going forward. that spark is going forward and it's being broadened. That's what my hope is for my work.
So
Yeah.
that's so incredible. It is. I mean, it's so
Isn't it?
incredible. Yes. And I mean, what you're really saying is just incredible. And it's so generous, it's so selfless and everything else. But there's a point where you have to, again, the ego has to be minimized. There's no question about it, because it's like you're working with spirits. So it's like, but I don't think you want to completely give up your ego.
No,
That was my problem. That was my problem. It was
right.
just like, then you can get out of focus, out of whack with people as an empath, as, maybe codependent tendencies, whatever. And then it's just like, wait a minute here. What do I want? What do I want at this particular moment of my life? And with whom to share this journey at this particular moment? Because there'll always be overlaps. There'll be people coming in and people fading out. And that's, if you get old enough, those are the passages that, we're going to have a full moon, a mega full moon there in a couple days.
Oh yeah, I heard it's going to be a lunar eclipse, partial lunar
Yes.
eclipse. So it's
And
going to be pretty
basically-
powerful.
It's the
Well, it's
Badger full moon. And then because the eclipse is going to be turned into a blood moon, so it's going to have a lot of energy, right? And it's in Taurus. So it's going to have a lot of where we're burning off those things that no longer serve us. So it's a transformation moon right now. And that's what I'm seeing. Those who are sun sign Taurus are really getting that jolt forward right now because of it. Or if you have Taurus in your moon sign, then you're going to be really clearing out a lot of shadow work. If you have your rising sign, that's where you're getting kind of the boost, the support from that Taurus, which you're burning off anything that's holding you back from being able to manifest and do that transformation into the next dimension. So right now, that's a huge launch forward for a lot of us, really coming to terms with what's holding us back. A lot of what we're talking about, getting those spirit messages right now, knowing what spirit is saying and saying, okay, what is it going to take for me to move forward? What do I need to shed for me to be able to move forward? What am I chained to by my ankle with that weight that is holding me back that I need to unshackle so that I can move forward in my authenticity, in my goals, in my calling? And a lot of people are going through that right now because of the energies that are going on. So I think what we're talking about will also help with that as well.
Well, yes. And as you said about this moon, I was reading about it, that it's the largest moon in, get this, 580 years. It's the largest, so that's pretty incredible. It is so massive as an event, 500 years, almost 600 years. I mean, these things are biblical in proportion relative to.
It's also a full launch into our Aquarian age, where we're, any of the remnants that were the Piscean, there's very few left. So we're definitely full launch into that Aquarian age.
And that's the right word, Lisa. The whole idea of shedding, like a reptile, like a snake that's shedding its skin, it's like, this no longer serves me. This is part of the past. Everything I did was, in a sense, a closure of karmic energy. That's also what I would like to share with you. When I gave these concerts to my father and my mother, they never had a proper, celebration or memorial. And then and that's what's so important about what we're talking about now, the shedding of the old and the bringing in of the new. So that was a concert that happened, incredible, on the same date as when I took possession of this home, when I closed this home. And it was a synchronicity between those two dates. But what I want to share with you now is that was a memorial concert for them, because, it was his voice that inspired me. She played the piano. I had all this music, but they never had a proper, memorial service in my view. So it took a lot for me to work to perform those pieces that were individualized for her and for my father, in addition to the birthing of Sapphic Odes. So there was the birth of new energy. It had never been done before. And that was basically the memorial celebration of your birth parents and everything else. And again, this ties in with all kinds of emotions that people are always living through, grief and the passage of people's. But that was a particular event, was a confluence of those two emotions. It's just like, well, something's being born, but something is being, remembered and commemorated. So, and this piece is basically dedicated to Jean. So there's the same kind of idea of this is being born, but this person was being acknowledged. That's why I say to you, if you dedicate these pieces, or what, in my case, pieces, but whatever your works are, even when you write a chapter in a book and you think about someone, you say, oh, that took a lot to manifest that chapter, and I will now honor that person, even if it's just a little footnote or something, to Jacob, to whomever, to whomever. And it can be people that you want to release. I did a lot of things that were basically, it wasn't all love. It was basically, well, I've acknowledged you. And that is more than, a lot of people. It's like, I have put you in a venerable place relative to my emotions, but I don't really want to integrate that energy back. But I have honored you and I have respected you. And this was my way of thanking you for the time and the lessons I learned from you, because you can learn lessons from all kinds of people.
Oh, yes.
But it's done. I'm done with that energy. I'm done with those lessons. I thank you for that. But now you're over there, and I have honored you with this creative endeavor that I have done. It is so releasing relative to toxic negative energy. And now you've offered it again as a spiritual gift to the world, to society, to yourself. And it's really why, if you live long enough and you have all of this stuff going on, you no longer have to do. You can be and not have to do, because you've done your work through all of these various challenges. And now you can say, I can be my authentic self. And it's not what I first thought. It's not what I first, because I was pleasing my parents. I was pleasing my bosses. I was, doing other things for mostly other people. They were necessary. And now you just say, no, I don't have to. I can just be with my needs and wants in the proper balance. And the people that care about you and know about you, they can accept that. They can negotiate with you freely and say, well, I can't do that, or I will do that. And they know where you stand. They know you're authentic. They know you're truthful. They know you're trustworthy. They know you're responsible, all of that. They know you're disciplined. So
I like how you wrap that up. The importance of that is very profound. Laura, did you have anything you wanted to say or share?
No, I just I'm soaking all this in and taking my own little notes, because I'm learning a lot from you, both of you. And I noticed that I just learn a lot from everybody that has an experience, and surrounding ourselves with people that are of like mind makes us stronger and gives us more of the inspiration to do more. And I really do appreciate you sharing your time with us, Michael. That really has affected me, and I've learned a lot from it. And I've taken some little notes, because some of these little things that you do, I can actually do for myself as well. So I thank you.
It was, oh, well, thank you, Laura. I'm so happy to have met you now. And I've seen your other podcasts. And so, I've been working with Lisa. She's been so wonderful, helping me work through some of my thorny emotions and past challenges. And, they're all, I leave you with this thought, because that was one of my poet inspired, and Lisa, this, that was Sarah Teasdale. I caught life back against my breast and kissed it, scars and all. And that is so, it's almost like you fought the hero's journey, and these are my battle scars, and I own them, and I'm proud of them, and I work through them.
You've had this, you've manifested it. This is just absolutely wonderful.
Well, as I said, they're little miracles, because I can't do it by myself, and the energy had to build, and other people had to say yes. And I was completely overwhelmed when it happened, and so grateful. Still am, of course. But now it's like, okay, I'm still here. Now, what do you want me to do now? Or what do you want me to be now? Not do, be now.
Exactly.
And I'm getting thoughts about all of that. So, but I'm so happy to share these experiences with you. And if they've inspired you in some way, and
yes, they have.
And lit a fire under you to do things in a different, we're all learning from each other. People, are more, in a sense, working on the rational mind side. Other people are more emotional. But fundamentally, you have to reach the wise mind, a combination of, just don't, believe in these things, just it's like you have to focus now, and then just don't carry your rationality and abuse yourself emotionally or so you have to, it really is the serenity prayer in all of
We're
all of
always
its,
learning. We're always learning. I mean,
the
when we
courage to
stop
change.
learning is when we die.
Well, yeah, because we're all basically part of infinite sparks to the divine.
Yeah.
And we came here to work on our own individual issues and to hopefully leave something of substance behind for others to follow. And that's been my whole manifestation of all of these people that have predeceased me in the music realm. And then you learn other things. That's why it's so important to keep learning. You learn about everything. You learn about this painter, this artist, this sculptor, this musician, this lyricist, this, and then you say, oh, and then you start seeing the interconnections of all of these things. And then you say, God, that is just, it's like the constellations in the heavens. You see all these various stars and they're twinkling. And, when you talk about these astrology charts, and this is in at a 90-degree, a T-square or whatever, it's like, well, it's like human beings. It's just like is this good energy now or not? Or do I have to wait? Or is this now, come on, this is the moment. You got to move this now. And you feel it. This is the optimum time to move it. Don't waste this time. It won't come back. Or no, let's just take our time now, because so it's so deep. I'm so lucky to have you in my life. I'm just very grateful to have you in my life, and that I can, share these things with.
Likewise, Michael, I appreciate your time, and yours too, Laura. Well, thank you. And thank you for watching today.
Thank you.
Join us here at Awakening Perspectives. Feel free to like, share, and subscribe. You'll get notices to any future podcasts. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.